On the first day of my breakup with the scumbag, Mark Leacock moved into my small apartment with his suitcase. I cried, and he handed a tissue to the side. Hungry, he went into the kitchen to cook. I took 2 days off and he worked from home for 2 days. Brother, the company will continue to turn without me, and I can't do it without you. Mark Leacock put the hot milk on the bedside and said quietly, "So are you going to work tomorrow?" I had a puffy face and was listless. "I don't want to go." He let out a and turned to sit down in the dresser chair, looking at me with his legs spread for a long time. "Why are you crying?" "I'm out of love, big brother." He raised his eyebrows, his eyes deep. "It's not the first time you've fallen out of love, that's right." I really didn't cry the first 4 times, but this time was different because it's so humiliating. That scumbag was caught by me, and he actually bit back shamelessly, saying that it was because I didn't even let my mouth kiss that caused him to split his legs. I was mad at the thought of it. That bastard yelled in front of so many people that I was a bean sprout. No breasts and no ass. The most humiliating thing is that I fell and ate when I beat him. It's too embarrassing. Mark Leacock, who had been frowning, actually smiled when he heard what I had said. "You're still laughing." He walked over and patted me on the head. "You know, you just think you're playing out of tune, aren't you? Wait, brother will give you a breath." The next day, Mark Leacock took someone to block the scumbag. I beat him up and took him to the hospital. He also took a photo of the scumbag's pig's head to show me, and the appearance of the blue nose and swollen face did bear too much. Brother personally beat it. "Do you relieve your anger?" I was even more angry, and pointed to the wound on the corner of his mouth and asked him, "Didn't you take someone with you?" He still dares to fight back. Mark Leacock said nonchalantly, "I made him fight. It's illegal to hit someone, but I'm defending myself." As you can imagine, Mark Leacock brought a group of burly black suits to surround the scumbag, but ordered the scumbag, who was trembling and scared, to pee his pants too. First, I wiped his wounds with iodophor and gave him a cruel look. "You are called wounding 1,000 enemies, and you are hurting 800. He looked at me with a frown, smiled with his lips hooked, and asked again, "Are you relieved?" Then stop crying. His thumb rubbed the corner of my eye inadvertently and whispered, "Stop crying for other men." In the morning, rub Mark Leacock's car to the office. When I arrived at the underground parking lot, I was about to run quickly after confirming that there was no one around, but he grabbed my arm. "What do you want to eat at night? I'll do it for you." I was stunned for a moment. "You still live with me today? Don't you go back to the old house?" After work, I moved to a small apartment near my company because I wanted to sleep in, and Mark Leacock still lives in our old home, driving a luxury car to and from that old and dilapidated school every day. I thought he was temporarily moving in to take care of me for a few days, because I was sad about falling out of love. But when I heard this, it didn't seem like I was planning to leave. Mark Leacock asked faintly, "Do you want me to go?" He suddenly laughed and explained, "In 2 days, it will be my uncle and aunt's death day, so it's more convenient for me to live here. Every year on my parents' death day, Mark Leacock accompanied me. He would prepare something to pay tribute to and drive me to the cemetery. When I think of my parents, I have a bit of pantothenic acid in my nose." At this time, a big hand reached over, ruffled my hair, and ripped the topic away. "Let's eat sweet and sour pork ribs tonight. I haven't made them for you for a long time." I sniffed and muttered, "Then I'm going to eat 2 bowls of rice and snack goods." Mark Leacock's cooking skills were trained by his grandmother, and the sweet and sour pork ribs are simply unbeatable. I was so caught up in that taste that I didn't even feel like I was in a meeting with the leader. The cold-faced president at the conference table was as unapologetic as gold, but I was full of thoughts about his gentle back in the kitchen with his apron around. How long will this break be? And will Mark Leacock be able to leave work on time to buy ribs? As soon as I thought this, my lower abdomen suddenly fell into pain, and an ominous premonition swelled up. I quietly slipped out of the back row of the conference room, and headed straight for the bathroom. And sure enough, it was my aunt who arrived. I was worried about who would send the sanitary napkins, and I saw Mark Leacock's Weshit come in. "What's wrong?" Unexpectedly, he listened attentively to the report of the brand manager, and noticed that the small staff in the back row sneaked out of the conference room. Stomach ache, diarrhea, or menstruation. Great aunt, I'll ask Luna to deliver something to you. A minute later, Luna, Mark Leacock's secretary, brought me sanitary napkins. She was the only person in the entire company who knew about my relationship with Mark Leacock. I walked out of the bathroom clutching my stomach, and Luna smiled and handed over a thermos cup filled with brown sugar water. This is Mark Leacock's cup. He told me to take you home first. The cramping pain in my lower abdomen was so bad that I took painkillers and fell asleep. In my sleep, I vaguely felt that something had fallen on my face, and it was a little itchy. When I opened my eyes, Mark Leacock was leaning over me, his eyebrows deep. Brother, he caressed my cheek, but his fingertips went down the line, gently touching my lower abdomen through my pajamas. Does it still hurt? Slightly stunned, I moved backwards, dodging the hot hand without a trace. No, it doesn't hurt anymore. Mark Leacock's hand fell into the air, paused, and the next second, the whole body was covered. His gaze pressed closer, his fingertips reaching into the corner of his pajamas without saying a word, and his big rough hands gripped my waist. What to hide? The scorching breath sprayed on my face, and the low voice wrapped around the tip of my tongue. Am I not your brother? I thought he must be in a dream, otherwise how could he be so abnormal? Brother, I called out to him timidly. I saw his eyelashes trembling. He pulled out his hand with a smile, patted my head, and became a gentle big brother on weekdays. Andrea Ailey is so good. When I got up the next day, he brought breakfast to the table like no one else, and called me to eat. I stood at the table in a trance and saw him reach over. The temperature on my waist last night burned my heart. What the hell? I caught a glimpse of his hand over me, resting on the back of the chair behind me. When he came back to his senses, he had leaned down and encircled me between his broad arms, and the smell of lemon mint was all in between the advances and retreats. What can I do to you? Crash. It's the sound of a chair being dragged. He laughed. Sit down for dinner. I'm going to be late. I sat down in my chair, relieved. Breakfast is my favorite seafood porridge, but I don't eat it tastelessly. Brother, I heard that one of your classmates is a star. I heard she's chasing you. So I'm about to have a sister-in-law. I gauged and tried to test his attitude to prove that the strange atmosphere was just a hallucination of the hormone-lowered aunt period. Mark Leacock lowered his head and drank the porridge, and said lightly, You won't have a sister-in-law. Ha ha. Do you want to be a bachelor in your life? Or do you actually like men? It's okay. Your sister and I are very open-minded, and my sister-in-law is okay. Watching him calmly finish the last mouthful of porridge, watching him put down his chopsticks unhurriedly, and watching his gradually cold face, for some reason, I panicked. I pursed my lips, trying to laugh but couldn't. Who made you my brother? Andrea Ailey. Mark Leacock raised his eyelids and looked at me. I have someone I like. On the day of his parents' death, Mark Leacock put off all his itinerary, and got up early in the morning to prepare his things. The car drove smoothly towards the cemetery, and there were only the two of us in the quiet carriage. From the bustling city to the remote suburbs, from congested intersections to at least footed winding roads, the hustle and bustle or loneliness outside the car window seems to have nothing to do with us. This journey that belongs only to me and him is like the 20 years we have depended on each other. When I cleaned the tombstones, he arranged the flowers and fruits. Andrea Ailey, you talk to your uncle and aunt, and I'll go see Grandma. Well, you go over first, and I'll look for you later. After his grandmother died, he was buried not far away, and every year today, Mark Leacock would prepare an extra sacrifice to sweep his grandmother's grave. He said that his grandmother was kind to him, and apart from his parents, my grandmother and I were the closest people in the world to him. Before leaving, he solemnly promised, as in previous years, in front of my parents' tombstones, uncle and aunt, don't worry, I will take care of Andrea Ailey. I laughed and quipped, my parents listen to it every year and watch you grow from a little nagging to a big nag. Mark Leacock suddenly pinched my earlobe, and his eyes were like torches. I am going to say this, for the rest of my life. I froze in place, pinched as if an electric current was rushing through the place. Crispy and crispy. Of course, you're my brother. He didn't answer, turned around and knelt down, and kowtowed to my parents 3 times in silence. I thought that his parents would move back to the old house in the future. But no, he still stays in my little apartment. He bought me this little apartment in the first place. Originally, when I bought it, I took a fancy to the one-bedroom apartment. But he said that the apartment did not have a sun-facing window, so he stubbornly bought the two-bedroom apartment. When he renovated it, he took one of the bedrooms for himself. In the name of it, he often came to check my quality of life, and if he found that I was not taking care of myself, he would order me to move back to the old house. At this time, I was standing in front of his bedroom door, and the hand knocking on the door could not be lowered. It wasn't until the door opened. Mark Leacock leaned against the door frame, and looked down at me and asked, "Why don't you come in? I've cut a fruit bowl for you." He bluntly pierced my thoughts. "What do you want to say?" I didn't dare to look at him, rubbing the edge of the fruit bowl vigorously. "Brother, didn't you say you were going back to the old house today?" Just as I didn't say it. He crossed his arms and chuckled, and looked at it for a long time. "I said before that it would be convenient to live here to visit the graves of my uncle and aunt, but I didn't say I wanted to leave." I was blindsided, trying to remember. He seems, indeed, did not say that he was leaving today? Isn't it embarrassing? Sure enough, in the next second, I heard him point to me in a weird way. "Or do you want to drive me away?" Where? How could I drive you away? I'm just afraid that you won't be used to living in my little place." "I'm used to it. We've lived together for so many years, and it's my place where I feel at ease to have you." I laughed hard, smiled brightly. "Me too. I'm so happy that you live here. Ha ha." The moment I turned around, I felt heartbroken and embarrassed about my tattered acting. The showbiz missed me, like a meat bun avoiding a dog. Andrea Ailey. I froze in place, afraid that Mark Leacock would come around and open up to me. This fragile mind really can't bear the slightest hint of ridicule anymore. "Don't you give me the fruit bowl in your hand." "Oh, give it." When I was about to leave work at noon, Mark Leacock sent me a WeChat message, asking me to go to his office for dinner. The boss lunch is made by the chef of the 5-star hotel, which is much better than the food in the company canteen. I finally stayed up until the end of work, and when everyone was almost gone, I sneaked up on the president's office. Only, it's Mark Leacock, who isn't there. The decoration style of the office is the same as that of his person, black and white, minimalist. The big boss desk is full of feng shui objects to attract wealth, and his only thing is a file except for the computer. The one that is popular is the picture frame. The photo was taken during the spring festival in our first year as a family, with a round-faced little girl holding a fairy stick, and a tall and thin boy, with her hands behind her back shyly. In the middle sat her loving grandmother. This is our first family photo, which was placed in his room when I was a child, and he took it to school when I was older, and now was placed on his desk. He always kept it within reach and cherished it extraordinarily, and I know that in his drawer, there is also a picture frame that frames his original home. I opened the drawer, and sure enough, there was a picture of their family of 3. It's just that there seems to be a picture frame underneath, which I haven't seen before. I took it out curiously, only to find out that it was one of the few photos I had with him. At that time, he had just finished a big project in a few days on a row, and he flew to my city without a break just to attend my graduation ceremony. That year, I was wearing a bachelor's uniform, and he was in a suit and leather shoes, and I took a family photo of the two of us. I know this photo exists, but when did he print it? There was no such frame before. If the family photo hidden in the drawer is a pain in his heart, then what does this photo mean to him? Just then, Luna knocked on the door with a lunchbox. "Mark Leacock is still in a meeting. He asked you to eat first." "It's okay, I'll wait for him together." As a result, he waited and fell asleep. When I woke up again, I was lying on the couch with Mark Leacock's cold, woody blazer. He sat at the other end of the couch, his head down and working on his papers. I have to say that whether it is a teenager Mark Leacock or a 30-something Mark Leacock, it will always be so good-looking. With a dazzling edge, it always inadvertently pours out delicate gentleness. "Wake up." I sat up, turned my head to see the food box on the desk, rubbed my eyes and asked him if he had eaten. Mark Leacock put down the papers, propped himself up on the couch with his left hand, and leaned over. A richer cold woody fragrance hit, and those cold and beautiful eyes were devouring me. How? What's wrong? Don't move. His right hand suddenly touched my face. Brother. The next second, he laughed, rubbed his thumb against the corner of my lips, pinched my cheek and tugged at it. I just came back a few minutes late, and you made me wait for a full hour. Andrea Ailey. Andrea Ailey. Are you a piggy? I angrily slapped his hand. Oh, how many times have you said it? Don't pull your face. Your makeup is all rubbing you. After saying that, I got up and went to get the food in the box. When he turned around, he saw him holding his right thumb to his lips in despair. I had insomnia. All I could think of was Mark Leacock pressing the fingertips of his lips against the corners of my lips. What happened to Mark Leacock lately? Why is it so abnormal? Full of cranky thoughts, the time unconsciously passed past 2 o'clock in the morning. The bedroom door was gently pushed open. With my eyes closed, I could feel Mark Leacock walking to the bed. He stood silently in the darkness and looked at me for a long time. I thought he had a nightmare like when he was a kid, and he came to me to find some real presents, or get up at night to go to the toilet and stop by to help me cover the quilt that kicks off the bed. Yet he leaned over me and gave me a kiss on the forehead. The burning breath went all the way down, across the bridge of my nose, on the tip of my nose, and onto my lips. It was a gentle and restrained kiss that stayed for a short time, but it didn't lose its lingering feelings. Andrea Ailey. Since I don't feel comfortable handing you over to any man in this world, I'll take care of you. I closed my eyes and pretended to be dead, but my heart was full of turmoil. What does he mean by that? Take care of? Is that the one I have in mind? Mark Leacock, he's crazy. Although his friends always joked that he was a sister control in the past, it wasn't because I couldn't find a lover that he would take over for life. Right. Just as I was hesitating to open my eyes and talk to him, he had already turned away. Good dreams. A dreamless night, because I stubbornly survived from 2 o'clock in the morning, staring at two big eyes, until 7 o'clock in the morning, listening to the sound outside. Everything last night suddenly felt like a dream. Mark Leacock was busy in the kitchen as usual, very different from the cold noodle president in the company. At home, he likes to wear light gray and beige home clothes, with a small yellow duck apron tied around his waist, and a tall shadow nested in the small kitchen, which makes people feel extra at ease. In the past 20 years, I have witnessed the growth of a thin and shy boy into the tall and mature appearance he is today. He once carried his little me with a thin and straight back, and he never left me for 20 years. Now he uses his broad and reliable shoulders to shield me from the wind and rain. I thought that he would always do this to my brother for the rest of his life. Woke up, he came out of the kitchen with his plates, looking at me quietly. I didn't sleep well last night, with 2 dark circles under my eyes. I listlessly made up nonsense. It's good. I went to bed at 10:30. I just had a dream all night, messy and brain draining. He raised an eyebrow and chuckled, placing the plate in front of me. Brush your teeth and eat. Seeing how casually he looked, I thought I could forget about last night's events as an unrealistic dream. But no, I'm really not able to pretend for 3 minutes. Brother, I went to your office yesterday and saw an extra picture frame in the drawer. Mark Leacock munched on a sandwich and casually replied, "What's wrong?" "It's the photo we took when I graduated." Why did you print it out all of a sudden?" I looked at him cautiously. Watch him slow down his chewing. Watch him collect the emotions in his eyes, and watch him respond lightly. I suddenly felt that my desk was a little empty that day, so I thought about finding a group photo and putting it on the table. But if you are seen, you will know the relationship between us. So what? Mark Leacock lifted his eyelids, looked at them sharply and bluntly, and repeated word for word, "So what?" I was speechless. When he asked me to join his company, I was hesitant. After all, although there is a brother and sister relationship between us, there is no brother and sister identity. If we let others know about our relationship, it is difficult to explain it clearly, and it is easy to provoke gossip. I didn't want to trouble him, but Mark Leacock forcefully kept me with the excuse that it was convenient to take care of. That's why I proposed to keep a distance in the company and hide our relationship. That's right, you're my brother, and you don't anything others say. Andrea Ailey, I don't want to be your brother anymore. These words were like a thunderclap on the ground, and the piece we worked so hard to whitewash was instantly blown to shreds. I know. You didn't sleep last night. I said those words to you. That photo was printed out by me, after your breakup this time. Like I said, I've figured it out. Since I'm not worried about handing you over to any man, then I'll take care of you. I have suppressed this feeling for many years, and I thought that if I continued to be your brother, you would be happy. I thought that letting go was happiness for you. But Andrea Ailey, I was wrong. Other men will only make you cry. There is no one in this world who loves you more than me. My mouth was open in shock, not knowing what to say. Brother, from this day forward, I'm no longer your brother, Andrea Ailey. I'm just a man who loves you like my life. Andrea Ailey, have you watched today's hot search? It's that brother and sister love. I responded in a trance, and bounced up from my workstation. There's nothing between us. Kim Sophie looked at me suspiciously, confused. It's early in the morning. What are you talking nonsense? That's when I realized that Luna was the only one in the company who knew about my relationship with Mark Leacock. Kim Sophie, who was sitting next to me, didn't connect us at all. Oh, I didn't hear you clearly. What did you say? She gave me a blank look, and flipped the news on her phone to me. That's it. These two people fell in love at first sight, fell in love with each other, and they fit very well in all aspects. And then they fell in love for several years. And when it was time to get married, they found out that they were brothers and sisters who had been separated for a long time. TSK. If a lover eventually becomes a brother and sister, it's really a sin. I lowered my eyebrows and whispered, brother and sister are very good. How fragile love is. The vast majority of love in this world will eventually disappear into trivial disappointments and disappointments. But after the love disappears, the two can never return to the same place. What they have lost is not only love, but also the place they have by each other's side. But family affection is different. They can be close forever, never leave, in the name of love, to support a family together. Kim Sophie was speechless. But how can two people who have experienced love become brothers and sisters? Mark Leacock is my brother, not my brother. My surname is Ailey. His surname is Leacock. And we are not related by blood, but we have lived under the same roof for more than 20 years. It's just because, when I was 8 years old, I picked him up at the age of 13. That year, both my parents died. My mother left a will on her deathbed, and whoever raised me until I was 18 years old could get that house. Because of my rich inheritance, I was scrambled for adoption by my relatives. It's just that there is no trace of pity in their eyes, and they even quarrel in the morning hall in order to fight for custody. It was my grandmother, who moved from her hometown in the countryside and took care of me, that ended this farce. That's when I met Mark Leacock. He wore a filial piety hoop on his arm, and sat alone on the side of the road. I recognized at a glance the thing on his arm, which I had worn the other day. Brother, why don't you go home? The boy looked up at me, with a blank look in his eyes. My dad is dead. I don't have a home anymore. What about your mom? Also dead. I squatted down beside him and whispered, me too. The boy's expressionless face loosened. Brother, I don't have any more mom and dad. That day, I don't know if it was me with him, or if he was with me. We sat on the side of the road all afternoon. He told me that his mother had died in childbirth when she gave birth to him, so he had never seen her. His father, who depended on him for his life, became an alcoholic after his business failed, became addicted to gambling, and died drunk on the road after owing a lot of debts. His mother's relatives had little contact with them, and had almost no contact. His uncle, however, was afraid of getting into debt trouble, and was reluctant to adopt him. Although we share the same disease, I am much luckier than him. At least I have a house that can shelter me from the wind and rain, and I have a grandmother who loves me, and he doesn't have much in the first place, and he has lost it all today. Brother, would you like to go home with me? Then you will have a home again. I vaguely remember that the boy looked up in surprise, and the first tear since the meeting flowed on Muran's face. Under the sunken sky, the boy took my little hand. Since then, it has not been loosened for more than 20 years. At night, lightning and thunder roared outside the window. I was wondering if I should pretend to be afraid to hide under his covers when he pushed open my door. Mark Leacock stood in the doorway, the lightning outside the window illuminating his face. That look was shattered and helpless, like a rainstorm. I sat up abruptly, and instinctively reached out to him. Brother, Come here. Mark Leacock walked awkwardly to the bed and took my hand. Andrea Ailey. He pronounced my name, as if he had finally woken up from a dream with a hint of life. Brother, what's wrong with you? Is it a nightmare? As a child, Mark Leacock easily woke up from his dreams during a thunderstorm. Every now and then he would habitually come to me, as if holding my hand tightly would pull him out of a painful dream. I knew that his dreams were related to his father's death. Mark Leacock's father died on such a rainy night, and according to him, his father had drunk with his fox friends that day. He was very drunk, and on the way home, it suddenly rained heavily, and his father fell on the side of the road and never climbed again. Get up. He said that he had never seen the scene of his father's death, but his dreams relived him over and over again before he died. Appearance. All the details are vivid and real, as if you are in the scene. He said that at first in the dream, he struggled to save him, but he couldn't make a drunk into mud when he was so thin. Carry it on your shoulders. Later, his dream trapped his feet, so that he could not move an inch, and could only be hysterical through the rain. Call out to him, trying to wake up the people on the ground. Later, he has grown into a man who can take charge of himself. In the dream, he had enough power to save him, but he stopped, and looked indifferently at the death that had been played out thousands of times in front of him. I thought that after all these years, he was so strong that he no longer feared that dream. At least for nearly 2 years, he has. They rarely come looking for me on thunderstormy nights. Brother, that's a dream. It's fake. Mark Leacock buried his face in my shoulder and said angrily, they said that I was hard-hitting, first killed my mother, and then killed my father, so no one dared to adopt me. Andrea Ailey, I just dreamed of you. It turned out that his dream demon this time was me. I patted him on the back and smiled and said, fool, you're very lucky. Besides, let's work together. Don't forget, I was raised by you. Mark Leacock's stiff body softened and he fell to the bed with me in his arms. We were like 2 chicks warming each other together, and even though the lightning and thunder were outside, we found a safe haven in each other. He whispered, yes, you are the rose that I raised with my own hands. The next morning, however, my rose was eager to wither on the spot, because Mark Leacock found out a secret I had been hiding for years. When he woke up, he sat on his back on the edge of the bed, as if looking at something. I looked over and found that what he was holding was my treasured photo. Mark Leacock asked calmly, what is this? I looked away and replied hesitantly, shine. He replied lightly, suddenly turning around and picking me up in the air. Brother, Mark Leacock moved me to a chair next to me, then turned around neatly, and lifted the mattress. On the solid wood bedboard, there are pictures messily covered, like the sleeping photo in his hand. It was densely packed, all about one person, Mark Leacock. Yes, under my mattress, there are pictures of Mark Leacock, sleeping, eating, working, and even Mark Leacock, who has just come out of the bath. Side, back, snap, candid shot. This crazy and perverted scene is densely written with my crush. That's right, I'm in love with Mark Leacock. From the ignorance and liking when I was young, to the infatuation that I dare not say now. Like these photos, my youth is full of him. It's just that, looking at Mark Leacock's sluggish back, I can't help but panic. Brother, although this looks a bit perverted, don't be afraid. Mark Leacock turned stiffly and asked, blankly, you, like me, how could I not like him? When I was a child, when the thin boy carried my little, me on his back, the fairy tale Prince Charming was embodied in my eyes for the first time. When he was in junior high school, Mark Leacock in the upper school was always the first student to burst out of the classroom, because he was going to the middle school, across the wall to pick me up from school. Later, he gave up the best choice outside the province, and resolutely applied for a local university, just because his grandmother was terminally ill at that time, and he couldn't rest assured that on the day my grandmother died, he took me by the hand and walked through the funeral process. He was in tears, but he pulled his sleeve to wipe the tears off my face, repeating over and over again, Andrea Ailey, you and me. When he was in college, he took classes during the day and worked part-time at night. While others are enjoying college life, he has the life of 2 people on his shoulders early. He never minded others knowing about his embarrassment. He just wanted to give me a better life, in order to provide for me to study. He gave up the opportunity to study and started a business with a classmate from a good family. That person paid for it. He gave out his skills, and life slowly got better. I know that he has given up one opportunity after another for my sake. He clearly deserved better, but he stubbornly carried me on his back, and stepped on thorns and bumps. How can Mark Leacock like this not impress me? No, not like. Hearing the answer, his clenched hand quietly loosened, and his eyes full of brilliance drooped in disbelief. My teeth chattered with nervousness. It's love. It's love. It's love. I love him more than anyone else in this world. Before, I coveted him vilely, eager to grow up to be a woman who could match him. But when I grew up, I realized that there was an unbreakable cocoon between me and him, which bound this despicable love and trapped him by my side. As long as I play the role of a sister, he will always carry me on his back. As soon as he finds out my secret, he thinks I'm horrible and disgusting, and that's when he has an excuse to discard me. So I don't dare bet. I've tried to fall in love with someone, and the 4 boyfriends I've talked to have taken it seriously. I like the eyebrows and eyes of the first, the voice of the second, the personality of the third, and the back of the fourth, because they all look like me. At first, I thought I liked it. Later I realized that it was just because they were like him. I advised myself to be content, that being by his side was already the best arrangement, and that if I was greedy too much, I would not be able to grasp anything. But he loved me. He really loved me and didn't decide to stand in that position because he wasn't worried about other men. I should have been ecstatic. I thought I was going to go crazy, and run out into the street and tell every stranger that he loved me. But I was more afraid than ever of losing him. If this relationship ended as hastily as the previous 4 relationships, then how would he and I return to the original point? At that time, I will lose him completely, and even coveting him in the dark will become a luxury. But Providence made people, and when I wavered, the hand of the gods pushed me. The photo of a corner peeking out under the mattress was discovered by Mark Leacock. Years of crush. See the light. Perhaps Kim Sophie is right. How can 2 people who have experienced love become brother and sister? I love you. Mark Leacock loved many, many years. After going both ways, Mark Leacock began to exude charm anytime, anywhere. I used to be conservative at home, and after taking a shower, I wrapped my body tightly up and down. Now I only wrap the bath towel around my waist, and I grab my wet hair, revealing a smooth and full forehead. Droplets of water dripped from the ends of the hair, slid over the solid chest, ran over the ribs, and sank into the edge of the white bath towel. Mark Leacock came out of the bathroom and stood in front of me, drinking water. Brother, why don't you put on your clothes first? Don't catch a cold, he said, snorting and drinking water, while frowning at me. I'm thirsty. I turned to get my glass of water and tilted my head, my mind full of the sexy Adam's apple rolling up and down under the yaw line. He leaned into my ear from behind, kneading my fleshy earlobes with his cold fingertips, and chuckled. It's so red. In addition to teasing me from time to time, he also guarded me to the death. However, I had a meal with my colleagues in the project team at noon the day before, and the next day he called me to the president's office for lunch. I ate for 5 days until the male colleague, sitting across from me, was on a business trip. I really can't come up to eat with you tomorrow. Yesterday I was bumped into by a colleague from the project team going down from this floor, and asked me what I was doing here. What do you say? I smiled. I said I pressed the wrong elevator, and I almost walked to the boss office to react. If you had made a fool of yourself at the time, you would have been suspicious. It's very credible to talk about the boss in such a generous, half-joking way. I thought Mark Leacock would have to praise me for my wit, as usual. Who knew that he just lowered his eyes, and silently picked up the food. I know he's upset. But why upset? I don't know. Am I saying something wrong? Yes. Mark Leacock raised his eyes and looked at him bluntly. You could have told them they were eating with me. You know, our relationship is complicated. We have been brother and sister for more than 20 years, but now we are lovers. We are lovers now, and we will be husband and wife in the future. Do you plan to hide in the company for the rest of your life? Husband and wife. My heart skipped a beat. This word means that I will have some kind of bond with him that is recognized by the outside world and protected by law. No one will point fingers at us anymore, and no one will be able to break us apart. Our names will appear on the same household register, on the same marriage certificate. I will have him to myself for the rest of my life. Just thinking about it makes my heart tremble. If colleagues ask how we met, I can't say we were. Mark Leacock raised his eyebrows. You just say, childhood sweetheart. How did you get together? I chased you. Is there a more credible statement? Mark Leacock leaning over. The rich, cold woody fragrance envelops me. Andrea Ailey. Listen, my heart is beating for you. It's just that before I could figure out how to make this office relationship public naturally and unpretentiously, an anonymous post suddenly appeared on the company's intranet. A female employee in the legal department sold her position. Here are 2 photos, one in the underground garage, sneakily getting out of Mark Leacock's car, and Mark Leacock staring at me lazily like a cheetah staring at a rabbit. The atmosphere is like the warmth after an earthquake. The other one is one day when I was in the elevator door after taking a nap in Mark Leacock's office, nervously looking back, just as Mark Leacock chased after him, holding my drop coat in his hand. It's hard to tell what's going on in the president's office. For a moment, countless pairs of eyes stared at me, behind my back, and whispered, the woman in the photo is her. It looks quite innocent, but I didn't expect it to be that kind of person. Isn't it popular to be pure lust now? How people are in private, of course, only the boss knows. No wonder I was covered with famous brands at a young age. Alas, I don't want to fight anymore. Kim Sophie stood next to me, and took my coffee, carefully looking at my face. Andrea Ailey, you ignore them. I'll admit, there are times when I'm a pretty cowardly person, but that's just for Mark Leacock. Someone else is here with me. It's a fart. Don't want me to be angry. I turned around and folded my arms, and looked at the few people in the pantry who were pointing at me. Look at it. My sister is young, beautiful and capital, and she is fascinated by Mark Leacock to death. Jealousy. You go and grab it. But with all due respect, just a few of you, TSK, you still have to improve yourself more and talk less about others behind your back. One of them cursed stiffly. Being young and beautiful is only a temporary capital. And there are people who are younger and more beautiful than you. You're just a wildflower that Mark Leacock picked up when he was passing by. And when he got tired of playing with it, he threw it away. And it was hard to daydream of marrying into a wealthy family. As soon as these words came out, several people laughed contemptuously. I walked over and asked them with a smile, do you know why the company is called Ma Technology? They stopped laughing and looked at the rice in bewilderment. Because Ma is Mark Leacock and Andrea Ailey. Rumors spread throughout the company, but I calmed down. Not only did he go to the president's office for dinner every day, but he also took Mark Leacock's arm around him, in the crowded hall, and got off work together. I knew it was only a matter of time, before my siblings were picked up. After all, it's a big city, and I've lived here with Mark Leacock for over 20 years. But I'm more worried about how far I can go with him than gossip. Or, if one day, our love is exhausted in trivial daily life, then in what capacity can I continue to stay with him? I lived with him for more than 20 years, and now in my world, there are only Mark Leacock and others. He is the only important. He is the only special. He was the light in my life, the warmth I desperately wanted to grasp. I can't live without him, so I have to hold on to him. Now that it's started, there's no turning back. Brother, I'm going to print a photo of us and put it at the workstation. You see which one is more suitable for showing affection. Mark Leacock leaned over my ear from behind. I think there's a photo that clarifies our relationship the most. The next day, the official account posted 2 photos on the company's intranet. The first one is a coded marriage certificate, but the stamped photo in the upper right corner is clearly visible, and Mark Leacock and I are wearing simple white shirts, sitting against a bright red background, smiling brightly. The second one was my 10th birthday, and 15-year-old Mark Leacock spread cake on the tip of my nose. At that time, I was clasping my hands together, making an innocent wish, and laughing with him like crazy. Do you know what I made at the time? What it is, when I grow up, I want to be the bride of Mark Leacock. The end.